Everybody. Next thing I wanted to do is go through my photo album with Yiz, tell you a little bit about my life as we go, and I thought the best way to start this conversation, my Grandma Smith. He was Virginia Smith, and I only have a couple pictures of her. However, I don't have any pictures of my Grandpa Smith named Donald. So there's Grandma Smith older, last years. So yeah, I don't have any pictures of Grandpa Smith, but these guys are Germanic descent, from the Port Huron, Michigan area there. So my Grandpa Smith is a war veteran, and ended up as a foreman at Ford Auto before he retired. And then my grandmother, she had also put in some time, and I think they both worked the rubber plant when they started, and he went on to being a foreman. And then later on, she was a registered nurse. So a lot of people remember my Grandma Smith in a good way. She's a very good lady, and has always been one of the more intelligent people, as her brother, my Uncle Warren, says, is you do realize your grandmother is the brains of the outfit. Absolutely. So that's why, I felt like it's a good idea to start out discussing my grandmother, because she's the one that got us to move to the Florida Keys so she could help make sure we get a good and proper upbringing. And so we had a lot of great times at her house. And, so I remember my grandmother as, the older heavy-set lady. And when I first got to know her down there, she had really long hair that she kept in a bun most of the time. Like, she'd only take it out to comb it, And then later on, she got that short curly hair. So, that's how I see her. But when she was younger, she was a very hot chick. And so they called her Tootsie, So I've seen some pictures of her and my grandpa when they were much younger. But I don't have any here. And as much as she's been a benefactor and all this, I've always had the bad feeling I'm not her favorite. I'm one of the least favorite there, and that this has a little bit to do with the relationship with her and my mother, and that she told me herself that she never really wanted my dad to get with my mother, but because he got my mom pregnant, they had to get married, that type of thing. So that's where I kind of think there's always been kind of a problem there, like some kind of tension there. So that's why I point that out. But even then, like, I feel like we really left on good terms, So she died when she was 88 of some health complications, whereas I'm pretty sure she would have lived much longer. But I feel like, we've had a lot of good talks since I've left Florida, and we've gotten to know each other better over the phone. And, well, one of the things we've been able to bond over is some of our experience with spiritual stuff or otherworldly things. Like, she had flatlined for 3 days and survived it, and I had been going to visionary state all these years. And so I get a lot of grief about my visions. Like, if I talk about it to the wrong people, I've, really, people have really hurt my feelings over discussing them. But my grandmother really tried to listen to it open-mindedly, and the only thing she could really say is, Jody, you weren't brought up right, man. So she likes to acknowledge that, maybe some of my complications lie in it, but she does pride herself in talking to her that, as a nurse, she never let anyone die on her shift, and as a grandmother, she did her very best to make sure our kids had a proper home and everything we need, and that we, stayed in school. And she really wanted us to go to college, and like particularly go into the medical industry, because they always need nurses, right? Well, that just hasn't been my fancy. I let her know I really wanted to go into the music business, but she was like, "Oh no, don't do that. Then you're gonna end up homeless or living out of your car, blah blah blah." So she really didn't support that aspect. But later in life, I felt like she was just like, "You know what, Jody, if you don't want to live an ordinary life, that's fine." Like, then she was more like, "Hey, you do you," more supportive. And so I just want you to know that we did leave on good terms. So I forgive anything that's wrong, because I think for the most part she's been a good grandma, but nobody's perfect. And so that's where when we go into the 3 days of being flatlined, so she was having some health complications back in 1986, and she flatlined. And the reason they didn't pull the plug is because my grandpa, I think somebody caught him buying a rifle and doing something that indicated he was like, she dies, he doesn't want to live, because she's been taking care of him. And so they kept her plugged in, and that's partly why she survived it. And so when she flatlined, she was receiving the guidance from somebody that was sort of like off into the peripheral here, And I know how that is. I've had dreams like that or something where I feel like, yeah, they'll always be just out here. And I've read about that. And in her case, she was saying she wasn't sure if the name was Jesus or Michael, but if you read the Urantia book, they talk about who, like the story of Jesus, and they say that he's really from his name is really Michael, but here on Earth he's Jesus, so we call him Jesus Michael. So maybe that's something for me to connect with later. It's kind of a cool story, Like I felt like I needed to hear this story because what he did was he showed her some of the world's most beautiful churches, and I think one of them might be St. Petersburg or maybe the Vatican, things like this, and just like, aren't these beautiful buildings or what? And then but then she was taken to a place where the church was being built in a very poor location, and then instead of using their resources to feed their families, those resources were being put towards this building because they really felt like, oh, we just need to build a church and pray inside of it. And so what Jesus Michael told my grandmother, it's like, he really wishes they wouldn't do that. Instead of building a church, it'd be better for him to just, get the things they need. Because, you don't really actually even need that church. So it was sort of like good confirmation for me that, Jesus knows better. He totally gets it. Like, whatever I've thought of religion or church, it's like, don't worry, we get you. And then, and while they were at it, he proved to her that reincarnation exists. So this is somebody I would say my grandma's a Christian, or she wouldn't be talking to Jesus, right? And she even says it to herself. She's like, I'm a real Christian. I just don't go to church. But as a Christian, she now believes in reincarnation, and she knows that she's drowned in another life, and so she's always kind of had the inclination to be really protective of us kids, going out back and swimming in her canal and making sure we were safe, because she always had a fear of the kids drowning. So that kind of like gave her a little personal confirmation. And then she actually saw the crucifixion of Jesus in this near-death experience where so there was like people to either side, and he was being marched down the middle. And what they do is they tie his hands to the board, and he's got to walk it down. And it's kind of a big, heavy son of a bitch. Plus, he's pretty exhausted and hungry and everything. So he kind of like tipped over, and kind of ended up touching it to the ground. And somebody reached out and lifted that up. And so later on, when she woke up from the flatline, she realized that wow, she was there for the crucifixion, and so was one of the people in the room. So she kind of felt like maybe she's been reincarnated since that, and she was actually a witness to the crucifixion. So who knows? I mean, so that's really interesting stuff. So it's like so that's a good question. Did they tie that board to him and then march him up to the post? That's a good question for us. Anyway, so moving on. They showed her the universe, man. She got to step back and see the universe. She couldn't describe it. She just said it was very beautiful. But and explaining the universe, she said, here's how it works. She says, okay, to one side is all life. The other is just the void. And they suspended her in the void so she'd know what it was like, because she was putting up a fuss about something. And they were telling her, Virginia, you have got to stop being judgmental. You've got to stop being judgmental. And so I feel like that's another important message she brought back with her. So like I love the part about the universe. To one side is all life, to one side is the void. So I've definitely taken that with me as interesting insight on how the universe works. But then we talk about this is sort of a personal issue, like so Jesus Michael is saying you have got to learn to stop being so judgmental. And when she argued, they showed her the void. Like, you see that? She didn't like it, man. She's like, okay. But even then, like when she came back to life, there may be some things that we'll have to forgive her for later. But anyways, with that being said, yeah, they showed her a lot of stuff. She really didn't even get to tell it all to me, but so I remember some of the good points. Like before she woke up, her friends were down at the bar where my Aunt Darlene works, and they were having a prayer for her, hoping she will survive. And then they sang her favorite song, and she saw this stuff before she returned to her body, and the lights came on here, and then she got confirmation they did in fact have this party, and they did in fact do this prayer. And so so she brought back some super valuable confirmation, and it gave us a chance to bond over this later. And so kind of brings it full circle, like later on now that she's gone and everything. I feel like we've left on good terms. We have this understanding. She knows that her mistake in life was maybe being too judgmental, because she really didn't want my dad to marry my mom, because she found out she's sleeping with black guys and she's doing drugs. And Um, and then later on, we found out my sister was sleeping with black guys because she got pregnant and ran away from home. And so you'll see in my photo album that I have no actual pictures of my sister in here. So I do have a sister. She's a few years older than me. So my mom and dad got together before. I think my mom was singing, and so my dad might have been familiar with her. Maybe he's seen her sing, and that kind of adds to her cuteness. I don't know. Like, he's a music lover, and I don't know if he was singing in a band at some point. My grandma mentioned he may have been a singer too, and so they kind of met in the partying scene. And my mom was really attracted to my dad, so I kind of maybe she made the first move, and then oh, he got in some big trouble. I think he threw like a party, and they got caught, partying someplace they didn't belong. And yeah, 'cause my dad was he's kind of like a DJ, people wanted to go to his party, and I really loved this part of his life, but unfortunately, as a consequence, had to do some time. And while he was in jail, my mom had a boyfriend. I guess since he was military, maybe he was somebody that needed to leave. Maybe it wasn't a serious relationship. So who knows? Maybe my dad's a little pissed at my mom because she got pregnant with this guy's baby, um, and then when my mom got pregnant with me, she was supposed to be on birth control, and before that, they were thinking about breaking up maybe. And there was somebody else that my dad could have been with, but could have been a better match that my grandma would have been more happy about. But because he got pregnant, they got pregnant with me, they had to get married. So, anyways, that's where, like, this is kind of important part of my life where, so, my grandma trying to keep them together, but kind of having this sort of resentment towards the relationship all along. I kind of feel like, my dad never really wanted to have a kid with my mom. He never really wanted to be married to her. Who knows? But somehow I think they're soulmates, and at the end of the day, so they're together now. I don't know if it's romantic. They're not married, like, so they're together now. But it's like, they've been struggling all these years because it was just like, well, I wasn't supposed to marry you, so you get this, and then kind of feeling like maybe grandma didn't like my mom. So, and then with that being said, that kind of explains why I don't have any pictures of my sister in here. This was some of my grandma's thinking and some of her influence, and so I feel like with that has always kind of kept my dad very frustrated. So this could explain, some of the hardship there is like because my grandma being judgmental and and maybe having the attitude she did, it kind of made my dad feel frustrated because he could never really make his mom happy. But again, I really felt like we kind of come to terms with her understanding um, these are some of the mistakes, and that at the end of the day, she's like, you know what, Jody, I really do love you, and she kind of let me know that she does support all of my decisions in the long run. And so, anyways, I just really wanted to start off with that because, if I go through the story, I think most of the time we've had a good time. I think we've had a lot of fun, but there's just been a little bit of hardship, and I really kind of think it ties in with her attitude, and then the trickle down effect is kind of making my dad feel, kind of unhappy with his life. So, anyways, for the most part, I feel like these people brought me up to be a better person than most people. I probably have had a better childhood than most people, and some of the struggles we have are actually very common. So I'm not like I'm special because I've experienced such and such. More my mentality is, like if I share any of these things to any extent, it's something you can relate to. But at the end of the day, I really don't care to share anything just to talk about myself. I really hope that my videos are chock full of insight and confirmation, and ultimately, I like to think I'm on a path of mastery and that my life is always getting better. So I just want to say that before I go in, just in case we get into anything, too personal, I'm going to try to limit what I discuss. But for the most part, and going through this photo album, I think it's a great opportunity to share a little bit about my life and get you started off with a little bit of insight about how we got started moving into the Florida Keys and a little insight about how much influence my grandma has been in our family. So you guys, if you're sticking with me for this, I appreciate you. Have a good day. I'll talk to you soon.